delighted to welcome you here. I'm Mike Kane. I'm the Member of Parliament for Wythenshawe and Sale East. As you can tell, I'm not Andrew Gwynn, the Member for Denton and Reddish, who normally chairs the Westminster group of MPs. He is, I've just left him in the chamber. He is busy doing front bench work this afternoon in the House. And as forever, another quiet day here in Westminster, as you're probably aware from your TV screens. Now, it's great to be here talking about tackling the energy and climate and cost of living crisis, keeping bills down if we possibly can. Just the other week, in my own constituency of Wythenshawe and Sale East at the forum, we had a cost of living fair, basically, with all the utility companies and major service providers, and I can only say it was rammed, and the stories we heard of desperation were very moving indeed. Now, we know that this year has been very challenging for businesses and constituents in Greater Manchester. And we are faced as well with a very cold winter, where the Financial Times is telling us that the utility companies are preparing us for blackouts. Now, this also comes in the light of our targets in GM to be net zero by 2038. There are big challenges for both the water and energy companies here to deliver that, and more importantly, who pays for that. So we're here to discuss that. So let me say again, what needs to be done to tackle the energy, climate and cost of living crisis to keep costs down. And you're all very welcome here today. And I'm delighted that we will hear from both Electricity North West and United Utilities, and they'll be telling us what they're doing to invest in green skills and infrastructure and to keep their costs down to consumers in the Northwest and here in Greater Manchester. And we'll also be hearing from Councillor Amanda Chadderton, the fantastic new leader of Oldham Council, and also from Rachel Howley, Director of Citizens Advice of Greater Manchester. And then we'll be hearing from our parliamentarians on the call, hopefully as well. So before we get started, I think we've got a slide with the housekeeping rules. I'm not going to go through them all individually, but there is the usual hashtag and at following for social media if you want to do so. And there they are. Yeah, thank you for the housekeeping rules. I think everybody's seen them. It is, without further ado, I think I'm handing over now to Sam Loukes, the Vulnerability and Inclusion Strategy Manager for North West in this first section. So welcome to you, Sam.
Thanks very much, Mike. Yeah, really good introduction to what we're going to be covering here today. I hope you can see my slides up there, which Lewis is going to be ably driving for me. And if we can just jump onto the first one away from the title page. So, as Mike says, I'm Samantha Loukes, and I'm the Vulnerability and Inclusion Strategy Manager at Electricity North West. And I just thought it was worth just very, very quickly, for those of you who aren't familiar with our company, just to give you a bit of an overview of what we do. So as it says on the slide there, we own, operate and maintain the distribution network in North West England. And that, of course, includes Greater Manchester. Just to make it clear, we are not a supplier. So our responsibility is to manage the network that the electricity transfers itself down. But we don't have any supply rules or regulations surrounding this part of the industry. So it's us you contact if the lights go out. It's your supplier that you contact if you have any issues with your bills. So the network, as it says there, it consists of overhead lines, underground cables, substations, transformers, and all sorts of other innovative equipment that we have installed on our network. For the Greater Manchester area, it's mostly underground cables and large substations and transformers due to the volume and density of people who live in that patch. And just to say, our network is actually 99.99% reliable. So as a person living in the Northwest, it's one of the most reliable networks in the UK. And you typically experience a power cut once every 3 years. and the average duration of that is about an hour. Unfortunately, when you tend to hear about our business, it's when things are actually, off the norm and we're having big storms or we're having big events, but that's not the usual situation for us. We do actually have quite a reliable network. And that's really important for what we're going to go on and discuss over the next few slides and for the rest of this session, I think. We can move on to the next one. So moving on to the burning topic of the day, really, which is the cost of living crisis, the impacts that that's having on our customers. And I just want to share with you 3 things that we're doing as a business to actually try and support people during this period. So we are lowering our part of the bill. We make up a small part of your electricity bill, but we actually do have some innovative ideas to reduce the cost of that contribution that you pay towards Electricity North West services. And we are going to be increasing our investment. As I say, we innovate a lot using technology to reduce demand and keep bills low. And I'll explain a little bit more about that on the next slide. And also we have a huge support network for our customers through our Extra Care Register, which is free to join and sign up to. And actually, you'll be hearing from Gaynor from United Utilities later and from Rachel at Citizens Advice. And we actually all work together to ensure that we get the optimum number of people registered onto our systems for, who might need support during a water outage, during a power outage, or just during the cost of living crisis. So we can go on to the next page. Fantastic. So lowering our part of the bills whilst increasing the investment in the region. So as I said right at the beginning, whichever energy supply you pay your bill to, a small portion of that comes to Electricity North West. And that portion at the moment is around about £87 a year. So when you're thinking that, bills are sort of now approaching the £2,500–3,000 mark for some people, you can see that £87 is not actually a massive amount of the bill. We are actually going to be reducing that when we go into our next sort of financing period, which starts in 2023, and that's going to go down to around about £79 a year. So as I say, we are doing our best to reduce it, even though it is actually starting off fairly small contribution anyway. And we are increasing our investment, and in the next 5 years, we're looking to invest around about £1.8 billion across the Northwest, and a lot of that will actually be in the Greater Manchester area. And just looking at the little decal on the right-hand side there, it just shows you how that £87.25 is broken down. So some of it is future-proofing, some of it is innovation, some of it is just the cost of funding, and then an element of it is us being able to support people during a power cut and provide that 24-hour, 365-day response that we have available for our customers. So on to the next slide, which was point 2 on the previous slide, and this is where we use technology so that customers see an increase in their bill without actually having to do anything or contact anyone. And the way that this works is we have some technology which is called Smart Streets. And historically, electricity networks had no what we call voltage regulation built into them. Voltage regulation allows you to slightly adjust the way that the network runs and can change the amount of load versus generation that you're seeing. So in terms of balancing and having enough generation for the amount of load supplied, it's difficult to do if you don't have voltage regulation. We're seeing, low carbon technology has been introduced across the Northwest, PV, EVs. In some places now we're seeing heat pumps being installed, and that can actually change the state of the network again. So as can generations, so customers' behaviours, different types of technology, it all changes the way the network balances itself. What Smart Street does is it allows the network to effectively self-stabilise. And when you've got a self-stabilised network, what that means is that you can slightly reduce the voltage that it runs at. So what that does effectively is it reduces the amount of kilowatt hours that customers have to use to power their equipment in their homes. And by doing that, you're therefore reducing reducing the overall usage and reducing the bill. And we estimate that it's roughly around a £60 a year saving on people's bills that you can gain from this smart street technology. So over the next 5 years, we're going to be installing another 1,000 of these pieces of kit across the Northwest, hoping to reach around about another £250,000 properties, £78 million of that £1.8 billion of investment. So this is something which is coming down the line, because we're very, very conscious as an industry, and especially at Electricity Northwest, that the challenges that we're seeing at the moment are not going to go away when we get through the winter. This is something that people are going to be living and breathing for quite a while. And we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, whatever investments we're making into our network are going to benefit our customers in the long term. So if we just go on to the last slide, just a very, very quick summary of what we're currently doing, which is not technology based. So obviously we offer support in a power cut. If you're registered on our extra care register, you will get proactive support in a power cut. However, we are aware that power cuts can actually be detrimental to anybody, even if you're not registered on that. So we will give you support during the power cut. We're currently planning enhanced winter support for the coming months. And actually, we're doing a lot more than we would normally do over this winter because of the cost of living situation that we're in. We do have support and referrals available, great collaboration with Citizens Advice Manchester, who are one of our partners. We've got some safety campaigns running at the moment. We're very conscious that at the moment there's a move for people to be using indoor barbecues. So they're bringing their barbecues from outside inside, so that instead of actually having to pay for electricity or gas, they're trying to cook on disposable barbecues, which obviously is not something that we want people to be doing. We're working with the Fire and Rescue Service on a big campaign to try and reduce that sort of instance. And also something which is a great concern of us is people, what we call trying to strap out the meter. So bypassing the meter by connecting electrical wiring around it, so that the meter's not recording the electricity that you're using, and therefore they don't have to pay for it. Not only is that a massive, massive safety risk, it is illegal, it is punishable by prison term, and ultimately, once it has been discovered that you've done this, you will actually end up having to pay for what you should have paid for anyway. So again, something else that we really, really want to discourage. Just on to the last bit again, be winter ready. I've already said that we're working with United Utilities and Citizen Advice. We also work with Cadence. Some great partnerships with Cadence available to support our customers, and also to run campaigns that we may not be able to run if we all worked in silos. So one of the things that we're really pushing for at the moment is all of our partners, all of our charity partners, all of our business partners. We want to understand exactly how we can collaborate in the best way possible to support, the people of the Northwest and Greater Manchester over the coming months, because it's such a big challenge that we've got that, anyone working on their own is not going to be able to really make a dent in the situation that we're facing. And that's it from me, really. I know you're going to hear from some other great speakers, and we'll have some questions. So I'll hand back to Mike.
All right. Well, Sam, thanks very much. That was very comprehensive, and that was a stat I didn't know, that 99.9% people have their electricity on the time. And as a constituency MP, well, we're very well done for that. But that idea of people taking power into their own hands and bringing barbecues in is particularly worrying. And I obviously had a constituent lose their life recently who did something similar, causing an explosion on a house on Brownlee Road in my patch, and I knew some of the friends and family of that particular individual who tried to start a fire in his own house to keep warm by not using the utility company. So we need to certainly be getting the message out about that how dangerous that is. So that was a really good briefing. So it's my great honour now to introduce Gaynor, Kenyon. Gaynor and I have known each other many years. We do have robust conversations about the direction of United Utilities, but only rightly so. We know they are a good company and we are proud of them, but we know they also face their challenges in terms of utility bills, in providing their services, and in improving our biodiversity and keeping our rivers and beaches clean. And particularly, I think, in Greater Manchester over the last few years, we've seen these huge cloudbursts that are completely unusual, flooding the river Irwell in particular, and the River Mersey as it flows through my patch as well. So we are fighting this climate crisis, and in GM, United Utilities, along with the Combined Authority at the front of that. So it's my great honour to welcome Gaynor and to hand over to her now for her presentation.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks, Sam, too. I used to work at ManWeb, so distribution and network, and also Scottish Power, so I know both sides of that story you were telling. And I think the key about collaboration is well made as well, sharing data, being able to look after the most vulnerable people in our communities. We can do that so much better if we work collaboratively. So, Mike, I've just got two sides to the discussion points I want to raise. So the first is around affordability. I've got some interesting and some poignant facts, and it paints an interesting picture. So from an interesting point of view, data and facts are showing that payment levels are really holding up. I mean, let's just get water bills in context. It's on average around £420, and actually over the last 2 years it's gone down by 6% in real terms. So it's a little bit different to what we're talking about in energy and bills elsewhere. So payment levels are holding up. We've actually got an increase in cash collections and direct debits, and the credit ratings agencies are telling us, and we speak to them every single day, that spending is back to pre-COVID levels. So what's going on? Because that's not what the headlines are telling us. And the bad debt charges that we have, it's remaining at 1.8%. It has been for many, many years. And so that's a perverse benefit, though, of having a lot of customers who consistently don't pay UU. They've already got county court judgments and they've got bad credit ratings. And that's why we have that consistently, managed 1.8% of bad debt levels. But poignantly, we've got so many more customers phoning up for a conversation. A lot of them are telling us that they're relying on their savings that they've got from COVID when they haven't been spending, the COVID period when they haven't been spending. And what's going is their discretionary spend, so leisure, meals out, that sort of thing. But they all want to, the ones that phone us up and have a conversation, they all want to continue to pay their utility bills. They don't want a CCJ and they don't want a bad credit rating. And that's where having that conversation helps. Because we serve the most deprived region, the northwest.
No. Have we lost you again?
UK. We have the largest range of payment help, and we can get people onto the correct lowest bill guarantee method of payment for them in a matter of minutes rather than weeks, because open banking enables.
Have we lost Gaynor?
I think so.
Oh, well, no worries. We'll try and get her back. Thanks for that. Sorry there to everybody. I was slightly distracted. We are expecting now an announcement from Downing Street at 1:30. So we should know more news about the current political situation in the next few minutes. If we can't get Gaynor back in the next few seconds, I will move. Oh no, we have Gaynor back. No, we haven't. Right, I tell you what, I think we'll move on anyway and come back to Gaynor if that's all right. So the next section is about paying bills in Greater Manchester. We have two brilliant speakers, one in Rachel Howley, Director of Citizens Advice, and as a constituency MP, I think we would all agree that we cannot survive without the help of citizen advice service for all the support that they give us and our constituents. And we also have the brilliant new council leader in Oldham, Councillor Amanda Chadderton, as well. So we're going to take those contributions hopefully for 5 minutes each. We should then have some news from Downing Street possibly, which we will intervene on. So this is a very, I feel like Hugh Edwards here doing a live news feed with breaking news. So we'll see what happens, but I think we'll be flexible. So without any further ado, if you're all right, Rachel, to go, I'll bring you in now.
Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to hopefully share my screen. Just bear with me. Hopefully everyone can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, you can see it. Great. Okay. Thanks very much. So just going to do a kind of update really on the cost of living is impacting on our clients across Greater Manchester. And first of all, as Mike's already given an introduction, but for those people that aren't aware, Citizens Advice Greater Manchester, we provide free, independent, confidential and impartial advice to people living and working across the city region.
It's Gaynor here. I'm back on. Can you see me?
I think we've been interrupted by Gaynor. Carry on. So through our advice in areas including employment, debt, housing, health and social care, we empower people to take early action, manage the challenges they face and lead independent lives. And in 2021-22, we supported nearly 60,000 unique residents across Greater Manchester with over 300,000 issues. And until very recently, our top advice problems were benefits and tax credits, debt, housing and employment. And then this is just a map to show that our service across Greater Manchester is rooted in each of the 10 boroughs, and we have over 300 paid staff and over 600 volunteers who deliver our advice from over 93 locations across GM. And then just a little bit about our client profile. So compared to the general population, I think Mike mentioned this before, the clients that we help locally are more likely to live on a low income, be unemployed, rent their home, be disabled or have a long-term health condition, lack basic digital skills, and also do not have access to the internet. And in terms of the health of the clients that we see across Greater Manchester, locally 45% of clients disclose they have a disability and or a long-term health problem. And our data shows that our clients that we helped last year, as an example, 27% of those clients had a mental health problem, 43% had a long-term health condition, 22% had physical impairments and 8% had multiple impairments. And for clients experiencing health problems, they often have a more complex advice need. So for example, clients experiencing a mental health problem on average will present with 5 practical problems each, compared to an average of 3.5 advice issues for clients overall. And then just a little bit of data really about Citizens Advice as a service. So we have evidence to support that by solving practical problems, we improve people's lives. Of the people that visit Citizens Advice, 3 in 4 of those people felt less stressed, depressed or anxious after they've been given advice. 3 in 5 felt better able to manage their conditions, health conditions, following advice. And over 2 in 5 had to seek help from health services less often after they'd had an advice intervention. And then this is just a kind of an overview of the kinds of data that we're able to collect at Citizens Advice, which is really extensive. So we can capture the number of clients we see, the number of issues that we deal with. We can show which channel people access us through, so face-to-face or telephone. And then we can further break down those issues into specific issues, those around benefits, education, employment. We can show the top 10 benefit issues that we deal with, top 10 debt issues that we deal with. We can show the age demographics as well as gender, disability and ethnicity. So we have a really rich data capture that we have on our clients. And then in terms of the cost of living, so we have our own cost of living dashboard that we have for Citizens Advice Greater Manchester. And this just gives us a snapshot of where we were at the end of September 22. I think I mentioned before, benefit advice has always been the main topic of advice that we've given at Citizens Advice. And for the first time in the last 6 months, we've seen that personal independent payment advice around that has been superseded now by advice on fuel. So that's now the main topic of advice that we are giving to clients. That's in place. Personal independent payments. And the third biggest area of advice is around fuel debt. And then the fourth biggest area of advice that we've given now is around food banks, so food bank referrals. So that's not just to Trussell Trust, that's to some of the independent food banks across Greater Manchester as well. So the impact on our clients of the cost of living. So the capped cost of electricity and gas for the average family, as we know, rose from around £1,100 in 2019 to almost £1,300 in 2021. But in April 22, it rose by 54% to around £2,000. Under the energy price guarantee, which came into force from October, the average household's costs will rise again to roughly around £2,500. And again, these figures are changing kind of hourly at the minute with the announcements from the government. But while this is lower than the intended price cap rise, people will still be facing winter energy bills that will be double what they would have been last year. If inflationary increases in food, which is averaging around 14% at the moment, and other essentials are added to household expenditure, it will be seen that low-income families are effectively insolvent. If the projected rises are delayed, these families do not have the income to balance their budget. Inflation is currently running around at 10%, I think it's about 10.1% today, but incomes are not increasing at the same time. For example, welfare benefits were only increased by 3.1% in April 22, and pay dropped by 3% between April and June 22 in real terms. And then this is just a very short example of one of our clients. So, we're using the name David, who is a single parent caring for his young son. He lives with health conditions and is currently in receipt of universal credit while he looks for work. When we spoke to David, he was in a negative budget. His essential outgoings are more than his income, and he was relying on food banks for support to feed himself and his son. His circumstances and the rising cost of living were causing him extreme stress, which he was taking medication for, and he could not see a way forward. Whilst we were able to identify some small income gains for David, realistically, with the continued energy price increase, these gains will not be enough to balance David's budget. The worry about how he will cope is having a significant impact on his mental health, and whilst we can arrange a short-term breathing space application for him, this doesn't address the very real issue that benefits paid at this rate do not leave him with enough money to live on going forward. So briefly, just some challenges for our service over the next 6 months to a year. There's an increasing number of clients presenting with negative income due to increasing fuel bills, mortgage payments and inflation, without a real wage increase or inflationary rise in benefits to offset this. More and more we're finding we are exhausting crisis funds for repeat clients who are accessing our service again and again for help. And we've obviously mentioned before a huge marked increase in food bank referrals for people. And we're also seeing the impact on clients' mental health. You know, after 2 years of COVID that we kind of came through, we are now seeing more and more clients in mental health crisis, as well as an increase in our need to safeguard clients who are presenting suicidal. We're also seeing an increase in clients who are what we kind of call new to poverty, and they're not familiar with navigating the system, and it's a challenge in providing the right support to those clients. And obviously an increase in demand for our advice service that is straining our capacity as we try to support as many people as possible. And as well, I think it's important to remember that all of these present challenges for our staff and our volunteers as well. We're having to advise more and more clients that there's nothing we can do for them. So just to end, the kind of ask that we are presenting to local government is that we believe the government should, oops, sorry, missed the slide there. We believe that the government should enact emergency legislation to support enforcement action, to suspend enforcement action in the courts during the financial crisis, to ensure that courts are not required to give judgment or enforce orders against families who are effectively, but hopefully temporarily, completely unable to meet their financial obligations. And we've kind of got 3 asks around that. One is a stop on all disconnections, a stop on all evictions, and a stop on all bailiff action. And we do believe that this action is not without precedent. During the pandemic, for example, possession actions were suspended. And we think that's the only way forward to help a lot of our clients. I'll end it there. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hope it wasn't too depressing for everybody.
You're on mute, Mike.
Yeah, I'm on again, hopefully.
Yep,
yeah,
I can hear you.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, 3 clear asks: disconnections, actions, and bailiffs. Thanks very much indeed, Rachel. Also, 60,000 clients, 300,000 issues raised with you, and you've done this through a period of austerity where you've had to make cuts and amalgamations yourself as well. So, have my humble and grateful thanks for all you do as a member of Parliament. Right, we need to push on. It's great to have Amanda Chadderton here, the new leader of Oldham Council. I obviously work very, very closely with one of her predecessors here in Westminster, and I know what innovative, far-thinking Council Oldham has been in GM for a number of years now. So, Rachel, Amanda, without any further ado, I'll bring you in now.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for the invitation to speak as well. So as Mike said, I lead Oldham Council, but also at a Greater Manchester level, I lead the City Region's response to our cost of living crisis. Now, across Greater Manchester, all 10 leaders and the Mayor, Andy Burnham, we know and are quite clearly seeing the impact of the cost of living crisis. It's really real and it's really stark. And for a lot of our residents, it's only just begun, hasn't it? Because a lot of people have only just turned on the heating after having it off for 3 months, and we've not, at any stretch of our imagination, hit the worst of it yet. But we can see already the lengthening queues at the food banks, the increased calls to our welfare support advice, and we can see it through the conversations that our doorstep engagement teams are having, and we can also see it as politicians when we're out, door knocking in our own wards and areas every weekend. And the reality of it, of what we're seeing on the doorstep and hearing people, have been backed up by our Greater Manchester resident survey. We have 2.8 million people that live in Greater Manchester. And I think the survey is a representative example of the things that people are facing at the minute. And what has came out really clearly from that is that this cost of living crisis is reaching far beyond those parts of the population that would normally be referred to as disadvantaged, in inverted commas. And what that survey showed us is that 4 out of 5 respondents say their cost of living has increased over the past month. 4 in 5 of the respondents are also worried about the continued rising costs of living. Some parts of the population, particularly more likely to be worried about their cost of living, which include parents of children under 5, our disabled residents who are really feeling it, and our younger residents up to 24 as well. Almost half of Greater Manchester households will be unable to pay what is an expected increase of expenses by £850, which suggests that many will be substantially impacted by the rapidly rising interest rates, which obviously went up yesterday and I don't expect to come down at any point soon, do they? And then when we look at the responses to the survey, questions linked to food insecurity, we find the equivalent of approximately 500,000 Greater Manchester households have experienced food insecurity in the past year, and over half of households with children report food insecurity at some point in that time as well. Now, in order to respond to that, we've pulled a package of measures through at Greater Manchester level that can support residents across the city region. Now, this includes, we just introduced a bus fare cap. We're stepping up our real living wage campaign. We've got the Good Employment Charter. We've created a Helping Hand website, which signposts people to the support in their area. We're doing a GM pension top-up campaign. It's not just about us, though, and we've had engagement with retailers and the commercial sector to understand how they can help those most in need. And I know Andy's been speaking to Gordon Brown about the pilot with Amazon and what they can do to help us as well in Greater Manchester. And we've also established a Greater Manchester Cost of Living Response Group to share local good practice and identify some of the common themes across the city region. Now, in Oldham, what we've done, because it's absolute #1 priority for me as leader of Oldham, we've launched our £3 million We Can Help campaign. So this is the biggest package of support of any council in Greater Manchester and one of the biggest in the country that has been announced as well. So through that, we've doubled our Warm Homes Oldham scheme. We've increased the number of specialist helpline staff to support our residents, particularly around financial advice. We've increased support that we give to the voluntary sector. We increased digital support offering libraries to help residents get access to service online quicker. We're increasing the number of citizens advice sessions in every district every single week. We increased our community engagement team so we can reach to our vulnerable residents. And we've set aside £90,000 to set up warm banks across Oldham. Now we anticipate we'll have 15 of them before Christmas. And as a leader, given it's a priority, what I've committed to do every single week is either do something that promotes our We Can Help campaign, or educate myself, or see firsthand how the reality of the cost of living crisis is affecting Oldhamers. So last week I spent a day with our call handlers or our crisis helpline and listening to what people were saying there. Yesterday I was at the food bank speaking to them about their plans and also their fears over the coming winter. Now, in Greater Manchester and the north of England, we've been absolutely hammered by 12 years of austerity. Then came COVID-19, and now we've got a cost of living crisis as well. And there are quite clear parallels between the cost of living crisis and the pandemic. But I mean, I would argue that the cost of living is a bigger crisis, and finding a vaccine of some sort will be much harder than it was during the pandemic. But just as we saw during the pandemic, we're now seeing different areas across the country who experience the crisis differently. There's underlying social and economic vulnerabilities, poverty, inequality. They all play a considerable role. Also, so do the powers and the resources around different areas that we can draw upon. And we saw how during the pandemic that inequalities were widening. And here we are again, we find ourselves in a position where having to prepare ourselves to face a huge wave of need and demand. Now, I won't go on because I appreciate the Prime Minister's probably about to resign, and we burnt the Prime Minister.
Amanda, if I can interrupt you, you will know where you were when you were making this presentation, because the Prime Minister has resigned and gone back into the Downing Street. What's your initial reaction to that?
Well, what an absolute shambles. Do you know what I mean? I'm so embarrassed what must other people think? And either they don't care or they don't know, because the decisions that they're making at the minute and the real life impact they are having on people across the country and across Greater Manchester is absolutely abhorrent. But they sit there and have a row, don't they, about every bloody thing while we burn through them like there's no tomorrow. And everything's about partying. Anyway, I could go on forever.
No, I could listen. I could listen to you forever right now. Actually, I think you're articulating what many are thinking. And you said about how parents are suffering, how the disabled are suffering. There seems to be no preferential option for those who are, not in. The lower middle class now are being sucked into this crisis as well, and we have no governance at the top. And I know this is a all-party forum, but we know poor governance when we see it, Amanda. Yes,
of course, yeah, we do. And do you know what, we saw over the weekend, didn't we? Jeremy Hunt as brand new Chancellor. We'll probably get another one by tomorrow morning, the way that things move. But there is a financial black hole, and I absolutely appreciate it. And there's a financial black hole. I mean, I'd argue most of it is their own making. But what can't be done over the next 10 years is for us to go back to austerity. Because what is that going to say? I became a councillor 10 years ago, and I would have expected that more children get lifted out of poverty in that 10 years' time. But actually in Oldham, more children have fell into poverty. Entrenched poverty is bigger in Oldham and Greater Manchester now than it was 10 years ago. And my life should be better than my parents, and my 2-year-old's daughters should be better than mine is. That's the way society should work, isn't it? But we've actually regressed. And I think, we need to bang the drum at Greater Manchester, and obviously as parliamentarians around Greater Manchester, anybody that has a leadership role, we have to be saying enough's enough. You can't keep on taking things out of a welfare bill that disproportionately hits us in the north, and the poorest the worst.
Amanda, just very quickly as well, to bring your presentation to a conclusion, you did say there's now a GM cost of living group. How do we feed into that, Sus?
So how that came about was because I had a conversation with Andy Burnham. Thing is, like, cost of living, poverty, equality, everybody goes, oh, it's everybody's job, isn't it? Now, I take the view that once you say that, it becomes nobody's job, because everybody absolves one's responsibility. So you have to have somebody that holds the ring. Obviously, I think Andy thought I was pitching for a job, which I wasn't. But obviously, Andy gave me a job in respect of that. So I lead down at City Region with officers from the combined authority. So
the answer is we can contact you directly.
Contact me, or through Andy's office, and it'll come down,
Great. I'm really grateful for that, and thanks again for reacting to the immediate news of the Prime Minister resigning. Right, we lost Gaynor. Gaynor, I think we were just about to head into part 2 of your presentation around climate challenges, flood, drought, and the security of supply and resilience, hopefully. Can you give us a couple of minutes on that, and then we'll begin to open up the discussion?
Absolutely, yeah, Amanda, that was great. I love listening to that. So 3 million customers. We touch every single home and business in the Northwest, and 18% of those are in water poverty. So that's 5% or more of your income is paid on water. So I think that gives us some sort of a scale of the issue. And Mike, I don't think I got this point over, but I will rapidly go through it. The fact is that because we have such a deprived region, because we have so many customers that already cannot and do not and will not pay us, that's a huge amount. But we also have 200,000 that we help to pay, and that number has stayed pretty much static. So it's sort of like it's no changes at UU in terms of what we're seeing through the current cost of living challenges, apart from the people that are phoning us up now. So that always sort of stays the same. We're now having more and more conversations with people who want help or want to look and investigate, is there a cheaper way they can pay their bill? And what I was going into is that's where open banking comes into place, because we've got apps, and it particularly helps those people who are, on the gig economy or get paid in cash. They can actually pay when they can afford to. And all of the payment schemes that we've got, we can easily match them in, because what we found is that generally people do not want to get into debt. They don't want a county court judgment, and they don't want a bad credit rating. So where UU comes in, serving the region that we do, we have the widest and most full range of payment schemes. So that's why we work with so many of your constituency offices and with local authorities and with the advice agencies. We created an affordability hub, which is almost like a trip advisor for financial support, where any agency goes in, and because if somebody is struggling with a water bill or an electricity bill or with a gas bill, then actually they need that resource to be able to say, well, actually, if you've got an issue here, all of this stuff can help you. So that works. Now, the challenge that we've got in terms of the environmental programme, to achieve all the objectives that are now coming through, and everybody's seeing all of the bad press the water sector's getting there in storm overflows, but it means an environmental programme that's 5 times bigger than the one we currently have. And that will add, just on the environmental programme alone, an additional £100 to the current £420 bill by 2030. So how do we square that? It's around the green skills. It's around working together collaboratively rather than pouring concrete, looking at slowing the flow of rainfall that falls, and also working collaboratively, particularly with local authorities, in terms of separating those systems. So there's no surface rain water runoff from highways, from streets, from paved over, from gardens, from astroturf in the back, from urban creep. That's what we need to do. And that's the message that we're trying to get across. And the final thing is, we've got 139 million of pounds goes into a social tariff. So that's certain threshold in terms of benefit support. Now, what we're doing is supporting the Consumer Council for Water in its call for a national social tariff. So our customers in UU's area, we pay £1.75p into a social tariff pot. Affinity Water down south, their customers will pay £14. We're calling, that's a postcode lottery, we're calling for a national social tariff. So all that money goes into a central pot, and then wherever you live in the country, if you're at a certain level, you get that social tariff. That's what we're calling for, and that's what we'd like some support with as well. And it's not our idea, it's the Consumer Council for Water. So we haven't got a worsening picture at the moment. We are not complacent, and we're helping customers that we ordinarily wouldn't as much as we can to keep paying. And we've got the green agenda, where we're looking really at different skill set and different solutions. And one of the things we're doing, Mike, in your area, is getting involved in the zero carbon investment model that's being piloted in Wythenshawe, and that's through the whole Greater Manchester Combined Authority work. So I'll talk to you more about that separately.
Well, that's great, Gaynor, and obviously I like any pilots in Wythenshawe as a self-interested constituency MP. I assume United Utilities have no immediate response on the resignation of the Prime Minister. I won't put you on the spot. So I think it was easier with Amanda as a council leader, but the situation we face. Thank you for that so much, Gaynor. That's really useful, and my personal thanks to United Utilities for turning up to my cost of living event the other week as well, and supplying local residents with up-to-date information around their bills and support that they can get as well. And I encourage other parliamentarians. Now, I have to say, if there's any parliamentarians left on the call after what's just happened, I will be astonished. But is there anyone out there who would like to have a word? Is there anyone on here, Jill, now, who wants to come in?
Yeah, Dan White of Disability Rights UK does want to ask some questions. So
good. Have we got Helen as well? Is that from Helen Rowlands? No, just Dan.
Dan.
Yes, I'm here as well.
Right. Well, we'll take Dan first, if that's all right. And Helen, if we get a question from you, that would be great. So Dan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to attend today. And it's nice to hear everyone speak about their ideas to combat this cost of energy crisis. I just wanted to draw really the focus crisis for disabled people predominantly. Citizens Advice released a report that have identified the 3 primary reasons people self-disconnect from their energy. That's disabled residents, people with learning disabilities, neurological, cognitive, or psychosocial impairments. They're at greater risk of falling into this scenario of self-disconnection when it comes to the use of prepayment meters. I would like to know, can the members of Parliament present please confirm if they are able to support actions from disabled people's organisations and the not-for-profit debt sector for a ban on prepayment meters in recognition of the discriminatory impacts?
Well, I'm sure we can support that, Dan, as best we can. But what sort of support is it you want? Something to raise it in Parliament, to write to the Minister, or a written question to the departments? What would be your preferred method?
I think preferred method at the minute, because obviously now Liz Truss has resigned and now everything is going to be in flux yet again. Historically, we have found as a DPO lead and disability poverty campaign group, every time we try to raise a question, we seem to be stuck with a new flux of government and the answers get lost. So predominantly, it would be good if we could pursue every avenue just to raise the attention, if you see what I mean.
Well, I'll certainly commit to having a chat to you and see what's the best way parliamentarians
if you could, that'd be fantastic.
And just to say, if you think you're in a state of flux, I'm Shadow Aviation and Maritime Minister, and I was on my third minister yesterday at a statutory instrument committee. So you're not the only one out there, Dan, that's struggling to get through to government.
I really appreciate it, Mike. But if we could have a chat externally, that would be great, because obviously if we can, not mean to say hit them from all angles, but if we can hit from all angles, then possibly the question could be raised, because prepayment meters are costing more, and obviously so many people are self-disconnecting, and people are being forced onto debt repayments on them, so that really, for the disabled community, they really do need to go.
Yeah, I know. And when I go canvassing as well, when people are going to the post office to top up their electricity, that card that used to last a week is lasting a couple of days now. So
exactly.
I get it. I get it all the time on the doorstep. It really began to become very noticeable actually about 6 months ago, with people raising it and us logging it. Helen, can I bring you in?
Thank you very much. Okay, so Dan and myself are two of the steering group members of the Disability Poverty Campaign Group, and we have the support of the Trussell Trust and Joseph Rowntree Foundation and so on. One of our priority areas is social care. So looking at the citizens' advice data from earlier, the earlier presentation, it's not, sadly, it's not news to us that people who are in receipt of PIP, personal independence payments, are some of the most vulnerable members of the community during the cost of living crisis. We know from data gathered by the GMB Union back in 2018, data which myself and Inclusion London have built on via Freedom of Information Act requests, we know that the numbers of disabled people in the community who are falling into arrears with social care charging payments to their local authority is rising across Greater Manchester. So, for example, Oldham Council in January confirmed to me that currently about 3,000 residents receive non-residential care and are charged for it in Oldham. And Oldham Council over the last few years has sent out 2,000 debt recovery letters to those residents. We're very grateful, I have to say, to Oldham Council that no individual case has been referred to a debt collection agency, and we very much hope that that continues to be the case. The call that I have to make to Mike and any other parliamentarians is the call that I made to Andy Burnham yesterday, and we have his support. There's a minimum income guarantee which came into being with the Care Act, which safeguards an amount of income that the disabled person charged for non-residential care is supposed to be left to live on after charging. That minimum income guarantee has two elements. It's got a statutory element and it's got a discretionary element. The statutory element is set by the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, and it's reviewed annually in January. Matt Hancock froze that statutory rate for every single year that he was in office. We lobbied and managed to get Sajid Javid to raise it by 3.1% in this year's budget. It has lost track with the rise in the cost of living year after year after year. So any benefit increases that we manage to win for disabled people who are being charged for social care are going to be exposed to care charges, which we anticipate rising in April. So please, Mike, can the Parliamentary Labour Party do everything they can to force the government to raise MIG at the statutory level, at least in line with inflation? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Helen. The Parliamentary Labour Party is doing everything it can to remove this government at the moment, as well as changing their mind on a number of issues. But that's really, really useful. If you could make sure that the parliamentarians on the call have a detailed note on that, I'm sure we'll take it up. It's my great pleasure to introduce Tony Lloyd to come and say a few words. I don't know, Tony, if you've got initial thoughts on the fact that the Prime Minister has just resigned and what may happen next, in addition to our subject area today.
I think, like anybody who predicts what will happen next over the last, in the context of the last month or so, it's either a genius or mad, or possibly a paid political commentator, none of which I am. I just wanted to make well, I mean, look, in this sense, the uncertainty of government doesn't help on any of the issues we're talking about, because the press of poverty is real and it is now. And actually, we can't really wait for a government to sort itself out, whether it's the newish Chancellor in a week's time and so, or whether it's a new who want to potentially rejig some of these things, or even have a new Chancellor. The points I want to make, though, there are some asks that we've had before us today. I mean, I think we can support the Labour MPs. The request, for example, for effectively no evictions and no action on the no bailiffs and so on, is something that the parallel with COVID, I think, is very real, given the crisis that we went through this weekend. The request we just heard on MIG, I think, is a very reasonable one. So I don't know whether you'd be happy enough to, and also on the prepayment means, I think, again, all reasonable requests. So there are things that we could perhaps collectively put our names. So I'd be very happy to support a collective letter if that was agreed by the Labour MPs on the call. You can't collate us all in these few moments, but if it's possible to bring something together, I think it would be good to show, first of all, solidarity, but hopefully actually to bring some pressure on the government to look at these very real issues for some of the most marginalised people in modern Britain. So thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Tony, as ever. We will do that. It's just to say about bringing pressure on the government as well. Afzal Khan is not on our call. He's been very busy today because he had to be involved in the urgent question around the Chinese consulate in Rusholme in his constituency and the violent scenes we saw there on Sunday, but also he's got the adjournment to debate today, which is absolutely around this on fuel poverty. So I encourage everybody on the call today to look up the Hansard of what Afzal's saying today in the House on behalf of citizens of Greater Manchester. I can open it up. Kate Green's had to leave us, unfortunately, but I suspect the parliamentarians will have to dash now when there is a lot going on. And a lot of messages coming through to us at the moment. Does anybody else want to come in as I'm speaking?
We've got a message here from Rebecca Long Bailey's office here, just to say I'm listening from her office, but she's not here, but she sends her apologies. Kate's also had to drop off. But I think a lot of people are asking me, say, well, what happens now? Liz Truss has resigned to this agenda, that's whole sort of vacuum in policy. And I think that's quite, an interesting discussion, because obviously we're facing a dreadful winter ahead. And obviously, whether it's, wherever we go from here, it's actually very difficult with lots of people, sort of new minister, new chancellor, new leader, in terms of saying, how do we actually get traction when government's just gone through such things? So it's really like, where do we go from here? I think that's some of the questions I picked up here.
Right, thanks very much, Jill. Well, if nobody else is coming in, which I can't see. Thank you for everybody who did attend today. I would just conclude by saying this is very timely. We do have a massive cost of living crisis, and we are not getting much traction from government because of the obvious churn, both in prime ministers and chancellors and ministers. It's so difficult to build relationships when it's like this. So I think for all the public organisations that are on the call today, we need to think about, how we build resilience in Greater Manchester, how we work together to do that. And I always say to organisations that good strategy is turning what we've got into what we need to get what we want. And we have 2.8 million citizens in this country. We have some of the strongest evolved local government in this country. We have some of the world leading tech and industrial companies in our conurbation. And we're really going to have to work further, farther and faster to help people through this crisis. And I ask you all to consider how you could do that and feed in to the Westminster Group about doing that as well. So, Jill, can I give my final thanks to the participants today? Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's great. That is a very, incredible that she chose to resign in such an important meeting as well.
Yeah.
It's good to have us all on, but I think everybody does want to see what's actually happened. There's lots of Charlie Baker's been very asked a few questions about reducing bills and other stuff. But could I just say, Mike, what we will do, I think, is we'll take this away, whoever is going to be in the cabinet or not in the cabinet, and what happens with the who's the Prime Minister. We need to keep this on the agenda, and as you rightly say, Greater Manchester does have devolved powers and can do things differently. And I think what's demonstrated today, the companies like ENW and United Utilities and indeed Citizens Advice are really working hard for the people of Greater Manchester. So that's great.
Yeah. Great, Jill, and thanks for you, as ever, for pulling all this together, and for all the secretarial support for the Westminster Group. So with that, can I thank the parliamentarians who joined us, everybody on the call, Sam from Electricity North West and Gaynor from United Utilities for their brilliant presentations. And thank you, Gaynor, for coming back in after the technical problems. And can I also thank Rachel from the CAB and Councillor Chadderton as well from Oldham. It's been a terrific panel. It's been a terrific discussion, and we'll see you next time. All the best, everyone. I'm off to run to the chamber now, I'm afraid.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.